Why does it look like we are failing or unwilling to resolve the all-important Eskom issue? After all, it has been many years since those who were allegedly corrupt and destroying Eskom have been relieved of their duties. The same group that actually ended load shedding at some point. Besides, this is not a new problem, and our future, our economy and credibility as a nation depends on the functionality and efficiency of Eskom. I saw a clip of one of our businessmen complaining about how cheap the public obtains electricity from Eskom and that it made it difficult for the private sector to compete with Eskom. Is that clip real and true, or is it one of those maliciously manufactured campaigns against innocent people? It needs to be looked into, together with the explanatory note that goes with it. It bears emphasis that the resolution of the Eskom problem is long overdue. This is a matter of constitutional office bearers and the state having to own up to their critical obligations, and our curiosity should extend to whether independent power producers are a blessing or a liability, including whether we, the people, are getting value for money from them.
Over the years, there's been some discussions about introducing competitors to Eskom. And in many parts of the world, you do have these independent power producers. I don't know at this stage as to how competitive. And in fact, the information I received in the past was that because Eskom was so cheap, it was unattractive for independent power producers to enter into the market. But we have to look at the cost of electricity and mitigate those expenses as best we can, and we will do that.
Deceiver from Dorothy Masuka and follow those arrangements. Now, Energy Minister Jeff Radebe has denied any conflict of interest in relation to his family playing a role in the renewable energy space. Radebe is brothers-in-law with businessman Patrice Motsepe and President Cyril Ramaphosa. Radebe says the deal with independent power producers supplying clean energy to the Eskom grid happened years before his time as Energy Minister, and that Motsepe's company had not bid for the IPP program. Well, last week, African Rainbow Energy, Motsepe's company, told another media briefing that the IPP projects that the firm is participating in were acquired later from privately owned companies.
Last week, Tuesday, a news conference called by the African Rainbow Energy and Power, denying allegations of nepotism, saying IPP projects the firm is participating in were acquired from privately owned companies.
Even if I didn't have these relatives in government, I have a fundamental duty and an obligation not just to be transparent but also to be ethical and accountable.
Days later, a conflict of interest denied by the Energy Minister.
I have no conflict of interest whatsoever, as it is evident from the report that I've just given you. The 27 IPP agreements that I signed in April 2018 was to execute what was already a decision that was taken by my predecessor, Minister Tina Jumaat-Peterson, way back in 2015 and 2016. As I understand it, but the IPP office will also allude to that point, because they are the ones who have the information. Even at that time, the person that you are referring to never bid for the IPP in any of those 27 IPP agreements. So the issue of a conflict of interest does not arise.
Radebe says the tender process and the awarding of contracts in the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producers Program are fair, open and transparent. He says the assertion that Eskom incurs losses as a result of the IPP program is false and misleading, as the cost is passed on to the consumer. And without renewable energy, the current load shedding would be much worse.
We should not discard the investment made in renewable energy to date. This program has not only secured additional megawatts of capacity, but also has opened multiple opportunities for us as South Africans to advance our manufacturing capacity and industrial development, as well as participate in the value chain of new technologies. Furthermore, it has shown how important clear and unambiguous policy and regulation is. The 3-year delay in signing the PPAs created market uncertainty, which South Africa cannot afford.
The Energy Minister also denied Labour's claims that the IPP programs will cripple Eskom's liquidity position and threaten coal jobs, but an admission that the decommissioning of coal-fired power stations reaching the end of their operational life could lead to job losses. SABC News, Johannesburg.
All right, let's discuss further. We're joined by energy expert Ted Blom. Thank you for being with us in studio, Ted. So can we sum up one of the big issues here? So African Rainbow Minerals is involved in IPP. A brother-in-law of Patrice Motsepe, Jeff Radebe, is the energy minister. Another brother-in-law is the president. Have they all done enough to show that at least there was no preference with regards to that?
Okay, so according to what we've been told, Arab, or Mr. Motsepe's company, only became involved with the IPPs after they were allocated to other parties. So he will allege that he bought them at market value and not from the bidding process. And if that's indeed the case, I think that's fair.
Yeah, he's allowed to be in the energy space as long as it was above board.
Absolutely.
This comes after the chair, Jabo Mabuza, said he had declared, at least they were declared interest, but his wife is also involved in selling coal to
I have major problems with that.
Outline those.
The whole process of the board's appointment is problematic. It was done by the president as opposed to the minister. And secondly, it's clear from Mr. Mabuza's testimony at the Zondo Commission that he didn't go through a due diligence process. And that's why he hurriedly had to try and throw his assets into a blind trust, as he testified. Now, so that means that if his conflict of interest had been noted prior to his appointment, I don't think he would have been appointed chairman of Eskom, and I don't think he should have been appointed.
He was appointed and then said, by the way, my wife is involved.
Absolutely.
With coal.
So I think it's a major problem. Not only is he involved with coal, he also holds a very large interest in the companies that do Eskom maintenance, 2 of them. And you'll recall that the problem with the coal is on the short-term purchases, and that seems to be where him and his wife and family might be involved on the one side. And the problems with Eskom, being in the mess that they are, is operational maintenance problems. And seemingly there's a nexus between the supplier of those maintenance services and Eskom.
So he has done what he needs to do legally. He's declared all his interests. That led to him saying, well, I can't get involved in really what goes on in coal. And that led to some claims that he doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know why Eskom has resorted to load shedding. I'd like your opinion. Should the chairperson understand those operational matters, or is it okay for him to have a strategic view?
Well, depends on the situation at hand. This board was appointed to do a turnaround plan for Eskom. One of the major legs, or 2 of the major legs involved in the turnaround plan, is addressing the coal issue and cutting off the short-term purchases, which are costing Eskom an extra 40 billion rand a year, and started off in 2001. So it's been running for a long time. It's been rolled over without being sorted out at least 3 times. It's exactly where the Guptas got involved, and it's the area that is totally unregulated by the Eskom management. It's a free fall. It's like the Wild West. That's the one area, and it's critical to the turnaround plan of Eskom and its finances, because if you sort out the extra wasted cost on coal, short-term coal purchases and transport, you would save Eskom 40 billion rand a year with which it can pay its debt. The second area is the maintenance side. The reason why we have continued load shedding last year was, amongst others, because of shortage of coal from the short-term suppliers and shortage of maintenance, or proper maintenance. In fact, Eskom is on record as saying that a lot of the maintenance that's being done has to be redone within 60 days or 180 days because it hasn't been effected properly. Now, I know it's very easy to throw stones when you're throwing them into a bush, and the facts will have to be sorted out. And that's why I've called for a full forensic audit of Eskom. And it seems to me this government is too scared to do that, because then all these hearings would have come out.
Well, they are making it clear that there will be a chief reorganization officer, somebody looking at sustainable turnarounds before SOEs get money. Is that going far enough?
Well, I'm not quite sure, because I mean, it sounds like, you know, it's a good idea, primarily because the board has done a bad job. If the board had done a good job and we were qualified to do the job, we wouldn't even hear the name Eskom. So to appoint another party on top of the board and on top of the wise men and on top of the presidential task force and on top of the foreign task force, I mean, eventually, who's holding the can? Yeah. That's the one thing.
Well, Eskom is a big problem.
The second thing is there's no provision in the Companies Act for a CRO.
So how are they going to get around that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it just seems to me that this government doesn't know what's going on at Eskom. It hasn't got a clue how to fix it up. It's too scared to do a forensic, and it's at wit's end. So it's just chopping around in the dark.
So what you've outlined with coal, and we know that diesel is a huge problem, very expensive if you resort to diesel to keep the lights on. Now you think that green energy from the sun, from wind, is just wonderful, but there are claims around IPP. So let's assess what Jeff Radebe said today, that there will be no extra cost because of IPPs and no job losses because of IPPs.
Okay, so I think the minister's playing with words. Yes, the IPPs are cash neutral to Eskom, but they are not revenue neutral, because for every hour of electricity that the IPPs sell, it's an hour less sales to Eskom, primarily because they've messed around with the dispatch rules. The IPPs are far more expensive. They're more than 15 times more expensive than coal from Eskom. So
even the short-term expensive coal?
Absolutely. And so what you're doing is you're dispatching the expensive energy first, and guaranteeing those guys that they're going to get their revenue, and then Eskom's left to suck the proverbial hind, you know what. So I mean, Eskom is then losing sales, so it gets less revenue, and it has less money to pay its debt. And the problem is they want to increase the tariff from you and me to pay for the debt.
Was this about securing the deals for the IPPs? Because years ago we heard that there were wind farms sitting there waiting for a proper price. They need a sustainable model to feed energy into the grid. Is this about securing their fortunes? Because we want to move to renewable energy.
No, absolutely. And
is
eventually,
it fair enough or not?
Eventually there will be a fair field for renewables to participate in. But I suspect mischief with the way that the pricing and the bidding took place in South Africa. As much as we want to claim this was the best process in the world, I beg to differ.
Because do you agree? We want renewable energy.
Eventually,
that
yes.
is the way we're going. But you're saying the process of doing it wasn't fair.
Absolutely. You can only justify renewables if you have backup. Okay, because the renewables don't work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if I'm sending my miners underground at 4 o'clock this morning, I don't know if I can bring them out at 4 o'clock this afternoon if I only rely on renewables. So what's happening, Eskom has to keep its power stations running at no revenue, day and night, in case, and when there is renewable power, they get first choice. And then when renewable power falls off, suddenly Eskom has to jump in and supply the fuel, the energy. And they do that at a tremendous cost. A tremendous cost, and that's part of the reason why Eskom's costs are through the roof and why they're breaking down, because they're revving the engine, they're taking their foot off. They're revving the engine, they're taking their foot off, as in the renewables come and go. And this grid and network has not been configured to handle the renewables.
Okay, so this is a new problem. Let's just end off with where we are now. This plan to break Eskom up into three, we went through the budget. There were concerns that maybe Moody's would downgrade us again, downgrade Eskom again. Have we at least avoided that? Now have time to look at this and how to fix it?
Okay, so I think there's two schools of thought. The one school of thought says that we have done enough, in that so far as we haven't sold the family silver to bail out Eskom. But the fact of the matter is that the long-term contingency will anyway survive the elections and the Moody's current downgrade. So I'm not sure that until you sort out the problems, I don't think Eskom becomes sustainable.
Are we kicking the can down the road again?
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, thank you very much. Ted Blom, energy expert for us.
Energy Minister Jeff Radebe says there's no conflict of interest with him, IPP deals and his relation to brothers-in-law Patrice Motsepe and President Cyril Ramaphosa. Radebe has briefed the media on renewable energy and the need for South Africa to have an energy mix.
I have no conflict of interest whatsoever, as it is evident from the report that I've just given you, the 27 IPP agreements that I signed in April 2018 was to execute what was already a decision that was taken by my predecessor, Minister Tina Jumat Peterson, way back in 2015 and 2016. As I understand it, by the IPP office will also allude to that point, because they are the ones who have the information. Even at that time, the person that you are referring to never bid for the IPP in any of those 27 IPP agreements. So the issue of a conflict of interest does not arise. Every year, we are enjoined Parliament to declare our conflict of interest. I sign diligently every year. If I have any conflict of interest, I have no conflict of interest. In terms of the cabinet system as well, every year I sign a declaration to the President. I have no conflict of interest whatsoever.
Now, reporter Heidi Jokos was at that media briefing and joins me now in the studio. Heidi, thank you so much for coming in. Now, Eskom and South Africa's power woes are very much in the headlines these last few days. In Tito Mbowene's budget speech at State Capture, where we heard more details of what really is the state of the power utility. And now today, this briefing by Jeff Radebe, something that I believe wasn't really planned far in advance.
Exactly. So I always say that if there's a press briefing that's being called on a Sunday, it's either going to be massive breaking news or just reassurance or taking us back as to why they've made certain decisions. And this is what happened today. We heard from Energy Minister Jeff Radebe that, in fact, these IPP projects are going to take the country forward. And it comes at a time that he has this press briefing where Eskom has made it very clear that it cannot keep up with the electricity demands of South Africa. And these IPPs it's a project that dates back to about 8 years ago, where they're trying to bring in a different energy mix into South Africa's electricity supply, if I can put it that way. And, I was speaking to experts this morning and basically just trying to understand why there has been so much backlash with the IPPs from unions and NEDLAC, and mainly because they believe it's going to, bring in a lot of job losses for Eskom and so forth. And the reason why IPPs are so vital is because Eskom controls 95% of our electricity demand.
It's a monopoly.
It's a monopoly. And that's why there needs to be some sort of, new play in the market, which we did hear from the President during his SONA speech, that there needs to be new players. We cannot have all our eggs in one basket.
And the government needing to bail out that basket time and time again until they get their ducks in a row, or if they ever get their ducks in a row.
And this is what the Energy Minister, elaborated on. And there was nothing new that came out of his media briefing today. He basically just said that we cannot have Eskom being the monopoly. We need to have other players, specifically because Eskom is coal-driven, and this has caused major concerns in terms of the climate and climate change and what
sustainability
and what coal is actually doing to the environment. And that's why they've brought in the proposal and the plan to bring in a different energy mix: solar, gas, various things that can bring in the electricity and give it to the South Africans, because Eskom is just not coping at the moment.
Now, as you've just pointed out, that's nothing new. We've heard this repeatedly, in fact, probably for the last few years already. How far are we with these plans, and when are we going to see that much vaunted move forward?
So we do know that when Jeff Radebe was appointed as Energy Minister last year, Feb, he a couple of months later, in April of 2018, he signed 27 new IPP deals. And this was obviously not accepted by the unions, but that was a step in getting the ball rolling and trying to show South Africans that actually we do need renewable energy, we do need a mix, and we do need a new play in the markets. But at the moment, I think it's really going slow. We do not understand. I mean, we couldn't understand where we are at the moment. We just know that these deals have been signed, and that they are looking for new IPPs if there are any new players in the market that want to bring in their contracts and their businesses. But I think what was clear in his speech was that We are bringing in IPPs. There will be a new mix, a new energy mix in the markets, and we will do renewable energy, whether it's been accepted by unions or not, because the damage that coal is also doing to the environment cannot be sustained any longer.
Now, the Minister also going to great lengths, as we heard in that clip we just played, to again dismiss that there's any conflict of interest between him and his role in directing these IPP deals, and of course his brothers-in-laws being Patrice Motsepe and President Cyril Ramaphosa. It is the first time we've actually heard him speak so openly about that, isn't it?
Yes, so I think he's always made it clear that there's never been a conflict of interest. We saw last week Patrice Motsepe actually coming out in public and saying that there is no conflict of interest in any of the deals that he's involved in, or any of his businesses with the Energy Minister as well as President Cyril Ramaphosa. But today he made it very clear that there is no conflict of interest, and there was a lot of backlash when he signed those 27 IPP deals in April of last year, because many believed that this was going to benefit Patrice Motsepe as well as President Cyril Ramaphosa. But he, however, has made it very clear that there is nothing of that sort. And I think the reason why it was such a big thing today was because he actually went into a little bit of detail to say, I've made it very clear, Cabinet, Parliament, everybody knows that I have always signed that there is no conflict of interest. And I think that's why, it's a clear indication that he's basically saying there's nothing there. So
you almost get the sense from those various statements we've had from these people involved is that it is now personal. And they almost, want to put it out there that they're almost taken aback by those allegations.
Yes, because, if your brother-in-law is the president of the country and you the energy minister, and Patrice Motsepe is a very big businessman, a lot of people will speculate that there is some sort of conflict of interest.
Yeah, some might say it's a nice problem to have.
Yes.
I think we're going to leave it there for now. Heidi Jock, it's a very complicated and complex story.
The most important person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of an entire generation to come. Steve Jobs.